Let's talk about the words we use because they reveal far more about who we are than we often realize. There's a particular kind of man who refuses to grow, refuses to self-reflect, and lives behind walls built from arrogance and fear. These men aren't stupid because of a lack of intelligence. No. They are stupid because they choose ignorance over growth, pride over vulnerability, and control over connection. And their words give them away every time. This is one of the most common but most corrosive phrases a man can use. On the surface, it may sound like a simple deflection, but underneath, it's often a shield against accountability, a refusal to stand in the discomfort of consequences, and a desperate attempt to avoid shame. When a man says, "It's not my fault," what he's often really saying is, "I can't bear the weight of being responsible, so I'll push it onto someone else." It's an ego-saving maneuver that keeps him comfortable while leaving the people around him in emotional debris. Blame becomes a habit, and habits become identity. The man who constantly shifts blame begins to see himself as the victim, even when he's the one doing the harm. And here's the hard truth. If you're always the victim in every story, you've never done the work of looking at your role in the pain. This phrase also stunts growth, because if nothing is ever your fault, then you have no reason to change, no reason to apologize, no reason to reflect, repair, or evolve. You become stuck in a loop, reliving the same mistakes, defending the same behaviors, and hurting the same people, while calling yourself innocent. But accountability is not the enemy, it's the way out. Taking responsibility doesn't mean you are the problem. It means you are willing to be part of the solution. When a man owns his behavior, even when it's hard, something powerful happens. Trust is built, integrity grows, and love, real, messy, honest love, becomes possible. Saying "it's not my fault" might protect your ego in the short term, but in the long run, it costs you something much greater, your character. Because maturity isn't about perfection, it's about ownership. And the man who can look someone in the eye and say, "That was me, I messed up, I see the impact and I'm willing to make it right," that is a man of true strength. This phrase might sound harmless, almost like a casual self-description, but don't be fooled. "That's just how I am" is often a mask, a defense mechanism, a convenient way to avoid change, sidestep responsibility, and hide behind a fixed identity. When a man says, "That's just how I am," what he's really doing is locking the doors on growth. He's planting his feet in the soil of stagnation and declaring, "I'm not moving, no matter what truth you show me." But here's the uncomfortable truth. Just because something feels familiar doesn't mean it's healthy. And just because it's a part of your past doesn't mean it belongs in your future. We are not finished products. We are constantly in the process of becoming. Every conversation, every mistake, every hard lesson is an invitation to evolve. But saying "that's just how I am" shuts that door. It trades possibility for predictability. And predictability may feel safe, but it's a poor substitute for integrity. This phrase is often used when a man is being called in, challenged to grow, to stretch, to do better. Instead of sitting with the discomfort of that moment, he weaponizes self-identity to avoid it. He tells you he's just blunt, when in reality he's careless with his words. He says he's just dominant, when what he really means is controlling. He says, "I don't do feelings," when what he means is, "I've never felt safe enough to be vulnerable, and I don't plan on starting now." And yes, we all have histories. We all have patterns shaped by pain. But who you've been is not an excuse to keep hurting others or yourself. Growth is not a betrayal of your identity. It's the most honest expression of it. Because the core of who you are is not found in your defenses, but in your willingness to change for what matters. Real strength isn't digging your heels in and staying the same. It's being brave enough to ask, what part of me needs to be unlearned? So the next time that phrase wants to slip out, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, is this who I am? Or is this who I became to survive? Because how you are is not set in stone. It's written in chalk. And you get to pick up the eraser every single day. You're too sensitive is often said with a smirk, a shrug, or a tone that drips with dismissal, but its impact lingers far longer than the moment, because what it really does is invalidate someone's emotional experience. It rewrites their truth in favor of someone else's comfort. When a man says, you're too sensitive, he's not just commenting on emotion. He's making a judgment about worthiness. He's saying, your feelings make me uncomfortable, so I'm going to make you the problem. It's not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of his inability to regulate, empathize, or engage with emotional depth. Let's be honest, this phrase is rarely about sensitivity. It's about avoidance. It's used to shut down uncomfortable conversations, to escape the weight of accountability, to silence vulnerability before it exposes something real. When someone says this, what they're really saying is, I don't want to deal with the impact of my words or actions, so I'll make you feel weak for feeling anything at all. But let's talk about sensitivity. Sensitivity is not fragility, it's perception. It's the ability to feel deeply, to sense nuance, to care when it's easier not to. Sensitive people notice more, they process more, they love harder and hurt deeper. And that is not weakness, that is capacity. To feel things strongly is not a flaw, it's a gift. But in a world, and especially in a culture of masculinity that prizes detachment and dominance, sensitivity is misunderstood and mislabeled. And often, people who weaponize the phrase, you're too sensitive, are the same people who have never done the work of sitting with their own emotional pain. They don't understand sensitivity because they've spent years numbing their own. But here's what's often missed. Sensitivity requires courage. It takes bravery to feel openly, to name hurt, to hold emotional boundaries in a world that encourages armor over honesty. And calling someone too sensitive is not only inaccurate, it's a form of emotional gaslighting. It makes the person question their reality, their instincts, their worth. If you've ever been told this, let me say what you may not have heard enough. You are not too much. You are not too emotional. You are not too sensitive. You are just enough in a world that doesn't always know how to hold what's real. And if you're the one tempted to say these words to someone else, pause. Ask yourself what you're really feeling. Are you feeling exposed, uncomfortable, defensive? Because chances are the problem isn't their sensitivity. The problem is your discomfort with their courage to feel. True connection doesn't come from shutting down feelings. It comes from making space for them. So instead of saying you're too sensitive, try this. I didn't realize this hurt you. Can we talk about it? So I'm having a strong reaction right now. Can we slow down? Because when we stop judging emotions and start honoring them, we move from control to connection. And that is where real healing begins. It's one of the most toxic lies ever sold to boys. And it doesn't just silence emotions, it slowly suffocates the humanity inside a man. Real men don't cry. Say it enough times to a child and you'll watch him shrink away from his own softness. Tell it to a teenager and he'll learn to hide his pain behind aggression. Whisper it to a grown man and you'll see him build a life that looks strong on the outside but feels hollow inside. What does this phrase really mean? It means emotion is weakness. It means vulnerability is shameful. It means that the only acceptable form of feeling for men is anger, not sadness, not fear, not grief, and definitely not tears. But here's the truth. Crying isn't weakness. Crying is a biological release, a nervous system reset, a sign that you're alive and open and feeling the weight of the world instead of pretending it doesn't touch you. To cry is not to fall apart, it's to let something out so you don't explode from the inside. We need to ask, where did this idea come from? Who benefits from a man who feels nothing? Because a man who won't cry is often a man who can't connect, and a man who can't connect is often a man who can't love deeply, apologize fully, or even show up truthfully. Real men don't cry trains men to become emotionally constipated, stuffing down grief, heartbreak, and trauma until it turns into rage, addiction, silence, or violence. It teaches them to stay armored at all times, even when softness is what the moment calls for. And then we wonder why so many men feel alone in rooms full of people, why they struggle to maintain relationships, or why they erupt at small things, because they've been told for decades to bottle what needed to breathe. What's brave is not pretending. What's brave is choosing to feel in a world that tells you to numb. A real man is not one who hides his tears. He's one who knows when to let them fall. He knows crying with his child when they're scared doesn't make him less of a father, it makes him more of one. He knows crying when someone dies isn't weak, it's a sign that he loved. He knows that tears don't rob him of masculinity, they root him in his humanity. So let's rewrite this phrase. Real men don't cry. Real men do cry. They cry when it matters. They cry when it hurts. They cry when something touches their soul. And maybe if more men were told that, we'd raise a generation of boys who didn't have to choose between being strong and being whole. Let's stop teaching boys to fear their feelings. Let's stop praising numbness and start honoring depth. This phrase may sound like confidence on the surface, but beneath it, it often hides something much more fragile: fear. I know everything I need to know is rarely said from a place of wisdom. More often, it comes from a place of insecurity dressed as certainty. It's the voice of someone who has confused being loud with being right, who believes that to admit they don't know something is to admit weakness. But let's be clear, this statement is not about knowledge, it's about ego. A man who believes he knows everything he needs to know has stopped growing. He's decided that curiosity is beneath him, that new information is a threat, and that being challenged is an insult rather than an invitation. This mindset isn't powerful, it's paralyzing. It keeps him locked in the same patterns, making the same mistakes, offering the same hollow wisdom that's no longer working, but still loudly defended. Think about it. How can anyone claim to know everything they need to know in a world that is constantly evolving? How can we grow in relationships, in leadership, in love, if we've decided there's nothing more to learn. This phrase is often used to shut down discomfort. When someone says, I know everything I need to know, they're saying, don't ask me to examine myself. Don't ask me to see it from your side. Don't ask me to question what I've always believed. But that's not strength, it's avoidance. There's a kind of tragic irony here. The people who say this the most loudly are often the ones most disconnected from their partners, from their kids, from their inner lives. Because when you stop learning, you stop listening. And when you stop listening, you start losing connection. True wisdom isn't about having all the answers. It's about being humble enough to keep asking the questions. There's beauty in saying, there's more I want to understand. Tell me what this means to you. That's not weakness, that's maturity. That's what it means to lead with presence instead of pride. Because the man who stops learning becomes a man others stop trusting. He becomes stubborn instead of steady, defensive instead of dependable, arrogant instead of anchored. And eventually no one wants to bring him their truth because he's already decided what the truth should be. So let's replace I know everything I need to know with something far more powerful. I'm still learning. Help me see what I might be missing. I've never thought about it that way. Tell me more. That's real leadership. That's real courage. That's how we grow deeper, not just smarter. Because the wisest men are never finished. They're still listening, still asking, still becoming. This phrase might sound like a principle, but let's be real. It's often a power play wrapped in a shallow philosophy. Respect is earned, not given, especially to women. Let's sit with that for a moment. That statement doesn't come from a place of fairness. It comes from entitlement, fear, and a deep misunderstanding of what respect truly is. Because respect at its core is not a reward. It's not something you dangle in front of people until they meet your ever-shifting standards. It's a baseline, a posture, a way of acknowledging the inherent dignity of another human being. When someone says, especially to women, what they're really saying is, I see women as beneath me unless they prove otherwise. That's not strength. That's patriarchy. That's someone clinging to dominance because they're terrified of what it would mean to stand beside a woman as an equal. This phrase reveals more about the man saying it than the woman it's aimed at. It shows a man who believes that respect is transactional. It shows a man who has been taught that power matters more than connection. It shows a man who sees gender as a hierarchy, not a partnership. And let's be honest, this mindset doesn't just hurt women, it isolates men. It keeps them stuck in relationships that are based on control, not trust. It makes them unreachable, emotionally walled off, unable to receive the kind of support, truth, and love that only comes from mutual respect. Here's the truth. You don't lose anything by offering respect freely. You don't shrink by choosing to honor someone's humanity without making them earn it. You don't get weaker by acknowledging that women, just like men, deserve to be seen, heard, and treated with basic decency the moment they walk into the room. Respect doesn't mean agreement. It doesn't mean submission. It doesn't mean you never set boundaries or challenge someone's behavior. It simply means you're choosing to approach people, all people, with a fundamental belief that they are worthy of being treated with care, dignity, and fairness. And that choice reflects more about your character than theirs. When a man says respect is earned, not given, he thinks he's drawing a line. What he's actually doing is revealing his fear of vulnerability. He's showing that he only knows how to relate through power, not empathy. But here's a powerful shift. By leading with respect, especially to women, especially in hard moments, you'll see that it builds trust, it builds safety, it builds relationships where honesty can thrive and connection can deepen. Because the truth is, you don't offer respect because someone is perfect. You offer it because you are committed to being a man of integrity, whether or not the world mirrors it back. So let's stop handing out respect like a prize for passing our tests and start living it like a principle that reflects who we are, not who they are. The words we speak aren't just sentences, they're signals. They tell the world how we think, how we lead, and how we love. Phrases like, it's not my fault, that's just how I am, you're too sensitive, or respect is earned, not given, especially to women. They may sound casual or confident, but underneath they often reveal avoidance, fear, ego, and emotional immaturity. This isn't about shame, it's about awareness. Because when a man speaks from defensiveness, pride, or power, he disconnects. But when he chooses curiosity over certainty, responsibility over blame, and humility over bravado, he becomes someone worth following, worth trusting, worth building with. Real strength is quiet. It doesn't need to dominate. Real wisdom is humble. It doesn't need to be right all the time. And real men, whole men, don't hide behind tired phrases. They rise above them. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being willing to unlearn, willing to be challenged, willing to grow into someone who doesn't just speak better, but lives better. Because in the end, the strongest man isn't the one who never cries, never learns, never bends. It's the one who dares to show up fully human, deeply honest, and committed to becoming more.